Oh, hi. I was just looking at termites. So this termite worker right here is intentionally turning itself inside out, literally disemboweling itself, rupturing its guts. So why would it do that? Well, stick around and we'll find out. As I've mentioned before in biology, every time you try to make a rule, life always makes an exception to that rule. And if I were to say all termites have a soldier caste, I would be wrong. Meet the soldierless termite. So worker termites are completely helpless without their soldiers. That's why they've developed a soldier caste for protection. Usually a termite colony is anywhere between 1 and 20% soldier. However, there are actually quite a few species that evolution has left soldierless. So soldierless termites are mostly in the tropics, and in that environment, they fill the same niche as like an earthworm would here. They don't eat wood, but they're still decomposers, and they break down the organic matter in the soil so that can be taken up by the plants and recycled. Now here's a species of soldierless termite that builds these little fun-sized nests at the base of trees. These are actually fairly common in the South American and Central American tropics. If you cut one of these open, the first thing you'll notice is how hard the nests are. Inside, you'll find all these little chambers full of eggs, hatchlings, and other life stages. And if you're lucky, you may even find some alates, which is the word we use for winged reproductive castes. This species has these beautiful blue iridescent wings. So, for our question, how does a soldierless termite defend itself? So termites are skilled tunnelers and builders, and this is the first line of defense for any termite, not just soldierless ones, but especially the soldierless termites. You can find that they will usually dig their way to safety and under the ground or inside of one of these really hard nests. And you find these hard nests, they're obvious that there's termites in there. An anteater would look at that and say, that's where my next meal is. But if they try to open it up, they're going to find that these termites are all cordoned off into these little sections, and there's no big payoff anywhere. Here's a worker termite carrying a baby termite away to safety after a disturbance that I made. So now I'd like to take you back to the video that I showed you at the beginning. So you notice that I did touch this termite worker with some tweezers. However, the reaction was much more than the force that I gave it. It just basically brushed up against it, and this termite's abdomen broke open, and his guts started spilling out. So this phenomenon of rupturing your own guts for colony defense is actually present in quite a few of the soldierless termite species, and at least one species that does have a soldier. It's called dehiscence. So these photographs are from a colleague of mine, and they demonstrate dehiscence. And if you'll notice in the bottom two pictures, there is a weak point in the exoskeleton that you can actually see, and it shows up there. And that is the weak point where the termite can actually rupture itself. And in the top photograph, you can see it post-rupture, where it just releases all of the contents of its insides to the outside. So how could this possibly be a defense? Well, you have to remember that termites live in tunnels, and oftentimes ants are attacking them inside of those tunnels. So if a termite were to do this in a tunnel, it would potentially block off that tunnel, because an ant would go through and just literally get stuck in that. And the ant wouldn't be able to pass, and other ants wouldn't be able to pass either. And while this is self-sacrificing behavior, it does allow their nestmates to run away into safety. Now, collecting these in the wild is actually fairly difficult. We use these aspirators, and basically you suck in on this tube, and the termites get sucked into this tube right here. They get sucked down, and they land in this vial. And then there's a screen here that prevents the termites and soil and debris to get sucked up into your lungs. Now, a common laboratory prank is to remove the screen from the inside of here so that somebody collecting termites will actually suck the termites and the dirt into their mouth. And I want to tell you that that is not funny. But anyway, if you're trying to use a aspirator to collect these soldierless termites, it doesn't work out very well for you, because what happens is you suck all the termites in, they all rupture themselves, and you just end up with this hard to clean mess inside of there and no termites. Now, you won't find solitary insects doing this self-sacrificing behavior, but social insects do it all the time. Think about honeybees leaving their stinger behind and essentially dying after they sting something. You have to remember, for social insects, that what is good for the colony is good for the individual. So another thing these soldierless termites will do is just poop on you. And I guess if you're in a tunnel, a predator might get stuck in that. Now here's another type of soldierless attack, although this is a species that does have separate soldiers. But the workers will, as they age, they develop these blue crystals that you can see behind their, on their thorax, or in early part of their abdomen. And these termites will actually run up to a predator and rupture themselves and release this sort of blue, or expose these blue crystals, and this seems to have some kind of a toxic effect. What we don't know. Now, we don't know a lot about these soldierless termites. They live in places that are very hard to get to, and they're fairly plain. And a termite researcher needs a soldier or an alate to actually identify at the colony level, because worker termites are just too plain. There's no characteristics there. And so soldierless termites without soldier, we rely on the winged form, but winged forms are only present certain times of the year. And so you have to be really lucky to get a winged form, an alate, in order to identify them down to species. Now, more recently, it's discovered that if you dissect a soldierless termite and expose this little valve that's in its hindgut, you can actually reveal these papillae and these sort of structures that are, turns out, characteristic of a termite species. And so we've finally have this tool now to differentiate the soldierless termites. And people are currently going through a lot of collections, pulling out soldierless termites, and then that were unidentified, and then either identifying them or discovering new species. And there are new species of these soldierless termites turning up all the time, especially compared to other insects. And it's because we have this new tool. So while these termites don't have soldiers, they actually have some not too distant relatives that do have soldiers. Now, another thing is that you can take juvenile hormone, a common hormone used in insects, and if you apply it to a developing termite, it will actually induce soldierhood. So you can make a soldier out of a subterranean termite. Now, I've always wanted to do this with these field-collected soldierless termites, just to see if there's some kind of a latent soldier that, almost like a fossil of a soldier that you could create from these guys. But these termites live in places where they're really hard to study and hard to get to, and they're also hard to study because they don't lend themselves to laboratory use, and that's partly because they just rupture themselves all over the